Fairway values family, and we treat our employees and our customers like their family.
If you're looking for a place to shop, our service is amazing.
We have put an emphasis on hiring good people.
One of the things that we talk about is just doing the right thing.
And that is so key to this day and age.
Fareway just isn't about selling groceries. It's about taking care of people.
That, to me, is the best thing we can do at Fareway.
This is AEW!
Des Moines, Iowa. On Wednesday, June 12th, All Elite Wrestling presents Dynamite. Get the feeling. As the best professional wrestlers in the world bring wrestling's hottest show to Wells Fargo Arena.
AEW is where the best wrestle.
AEW Dynamite and Rampage. Wednesday, June 12th from Wells Fargo Arena in Des Moines. Tickets on sale now at AEWTIX.com.
What does it take to grow beauty and colors more vibrant? More water, the right sun, nutrients. It takes all of that and more. Like family. At Knoyer Garden Center and Glass House Market, family is present in everything we do. Generation after generation. From our family to our employees who make you feel right at home. That's the difference you'll find when you shop Knoyer Garden Center.
Two guys, two Chris's, one network. Iowa Everywhere. It's time for Two Guys with Chris Williams and Chris Hassel. Presented by Fareway Meat and Grocery from the Channel Seed Studios. Where? Everywhere. Live and always on demand at Iowa Everywhere.
Welcome to Two Guys with, one different guy. We swapped out Chris Williams for another, I guess, quote-unquote Iowa State fan. Josh Pate from the Late Kick podcast here on Two Guys presented by Fareway in the Channel Seed studio. Pate State. This is a first, man. We've never had a guest like this in the almost 2 years of this program. Welcome.
Did you see the nervous energy of my mouth? This is what happens when you try and eat your breakfast really quick, right before they go 3, 2, 1, record, and you're trying to clean your teeth out. Christopher, let me ask you a question. Mm-hmm. What is a so-called Iowa State fan? What is that? What is the difference between that and just a straight-up Iowa State fan?
Well, I wanted to ask you. I want you to clear the air here because there had to have been some kind of major bet that you lost a few years ago that has led you to pretend to be an Iowa State fan. What was that bet?
Well, I bet on myself. Man, any man who does that, I think also has to look inside himself. That's what I did as a child. I may have told this story, which is not much of a story, a long time ago, but you're right. I don't tell this enough. So I grew up in Columbus, Georgia. It's as far away from Ames, Iowa as you can get. It's like Moscow, basically. It's a long way away. So we'd watch like Georgia, Bama, Auburn, all the big SEC schools. And then I would see these places, these like Big 12 schools, these remote schools, and to me in the middle of nowhere in like another country, because most people where I'm from never even crossed the Chattahoochee River, much less get to Iowa. So I would see Iowa State games. And I don't know why it was that I saw Iowa State games, but I remember vividly like 3 or 4 different times I would see someone play Iowa State. These Iowa State teams weren't that good. There was nothing special about the teams themselves. But I remember it would be like Texas randomly going in there, and Texas would be highly ranked and they'd be favored and they'd probably win. But I would just look at it and I would say, why does it feel to me through this TV screen like it's so randomly hard to play at this place? I don't know. That was the first thing. The second thing was you can't go wrong with red and yellow. That's what Meemaw said. That's rules. That's like God talking, basically. That's just us inheriting through him that red and yellow. Even Hulk Hogan wasn't dumb enough to screw that up. That's awesome. And number 3, Christopher, who else has a tornado as their mascot? Let's just be real now. You know my proclivity. You know that I haven't even gotten sleep over this past weekend because I've been trouncing all over the Midwest storm chasing. So if you give me the red and yellow, if you give me a tough place to play, if you give me, and this is not debatable, great people for the fan base, and you give me a tornado as a mascot, I would ask, why would I need to lose a bet to understand how great that is?
That's it. I mean, those are three good points. Now, they did extreme downgrade the logo about 15 years ago, where they used that miserable I-State thing. But look at Matty Van Wink's.
Yep.
Oh yeah,
He's got the red, white, and blue tornado on. Yeah, it's Memorial Day. He's got the red, white, and blue.
The tertiary blue, baby.
The tertiary.
Yeah. Look. It's a great logo. What they used to have now, what they have sucks. I am glad that you called it for what it is, not cardinal and gold, but red and yellow, because that's what it is as well. And look, I think they should embrace the cyclone, the tornado, because clearly it is something that's fostering fans all across this.
Hey, tell me this story. Tell me the really, really quick elevator story about why they changed that, because I don't know that.
Jamie Pollard, the athletic director, this was back in 2007 or 8, wanted a new brand because people had, and maybe Matt can explain this better than me because he works there and went there, but they had been changing uniforms and colors for so many years. They just wanted a brand. But the problem is, it's I-State. Nobody calls them I-State. That's the logo, and it's very bland. You put that Clonado on a helmet, it's instantly recognizable. And look at Van Wink's. Iowa State employee right now refuses to wear the I-State. He will only wear the Clonado.
This was the logo when I became an Iowa State fan in 2005 when I moved from California to Iowa. This was the logo. This is my baby.
Yeah, that's what I think of in my mind. Yeah. In fact, in my mind, mentally, I've never shifted to the I. I've always maintained that.
It's a terrible logo. I think their current logo is one of the worst in sports, but we know Jamie Pollard, and in a lot of ways we like him for this, but he's hard-headed, he's steadfast. He is not going to change that. He said that as long as he is the athletic director. Let's back up for just a second, because I know we had so many people excited to have you on the show today, because they not only do they know you, they are loyal listeners of the Late Kick podcast.
And I thank them. You
can watch Sundays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, 8 p.m. Eastern on YouTube. But there are some people, I'm just going to throw my dad out there. Somebody 60 years old, he's like, oh, Josh Pate. Well, man, I've seen him on HQ, but what does he really do? Like, I could explain what you do, but I think it's better for you to explain. Like, if you're having a conversation with Meemaw, Josh, what is it you're doing these days? Explain what it is you do, because you're not. This isn't like the Kirk Herbstreit come up where you just you appear on game day and you're on the TV. You have created this brand for yourself in a very different way.
Yeah, I call it basically like dreaming into reality. So you could take maybe you would have been a little bit different than me, but in general, if you were to take people who grew up in the generation we grew up, all right, rewind to childhood, the whole digital media thing doesn't exist yet. It's only like 10 years old in its current iteration. So when you're growing up, if I'm growing up down in Georgia, and when I get to be like a preteen and a teen, and I'm in high school and then in college trying to figure out what you want to do, if you want to go into the commentary side of sports media, you're looking at the industry as a whole and you're saying, okay, I see former players, I see this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy. They all have degrees from either Northwestern or Syracuse, it seems. Like there's nobody short of having a relative in the business or a certain kind of degree or a certain former player or coach pedigree that's in there. How am I going to get in there? I didn't know. And so for a long time, it feels like, I don't think there's going to be a spot for me there. Well, then the whole YouTube, Facebook, hey, you can broadcast live on our platform revolution happens, which just is multiple Berlin walls falling. It's like overhead distribution. Forget those things. You've got it all in the palm of your hands. I just got gum stuck to my phone, by the way. You got it in the palm of your hands if you're good enough. If you're not good enough, you're still screwed. So I started to think, like, what would my perfect job be? I also probably listened to a lot of motivational speakers at this time. So I'm thinking, forget what could happen. What's ideal, Christopher? What would I love to do? What I'd love to do is I love to have my own show where I just talk about college football. I love to be able to go to any game that I want to go to in the country on Saturdays, stand on the sideline, and then fly home and talk about it the next night. And I would also, in an ideal world, love to do that because covering college football exclusively would free me up in the spring to fulfill my other life's passion, which is storm chasing. That would be the perfect world. So what we have done essentially since then is just create the perfect world. Because Meemaw, that's what I do. I have a college football show, and it is year round. I don't take seasons. There is no off season. We don't do that. But what you can do is you can do everything you want to in the fall. We got the most consumed college football show in digital media now, and we started it here in 2020. And we go to any game we want to in the country, and our folks at CBS are very, very gracious in resourcing that and letting us go anywhere. And then, Chris, we just fly home and talk about it the rest of the week. And then we talk about the one we're going to go to. And we've got transfer portal to talk about. We got all kinds of business and legal dealings in the world of college football, which I know very little about, to talk about. But then in the springtime, you need to be in Van Buren, Missouri, like I was yesterday. You need to be in Wichita, Kansas, like I was yesterday. We can do that too.
So are you back home now in Nashville?
I'm back home. Yeah, I'm back home. Okay. And we had all the stuff that I went to the Midwest to chase. It actually ended up here last night.
I saw that a lot of powerful tornadoes in Kentucky, and folks in Iowa watching this right now. Some of them, I'm sure, in towns that were very much impacted by tornadoes last week. It's been an incredible year, a spring so far for tornadoes. We know what got you involved in college football, and we know all about that. What got you so interested in storm chasing?
The movie Twister had a lot to do with it.
Yeah, but I saw that like 10 times in theaters.
I saw it 3 in theaters, and then I bought the VHS, and I mean, it's over at that point. So the movie Twister had a big impact on me, but that's 1996. I was passionate about atmospheric science before then. So I'm not sure I told you this before. So I'm in kindergarten, and all I used to do every day when I went to school was both my parents worked. So I'd go to school, and then I'd be dropped off at Meemaw's house for a little while in the afternoon, and I'd stay with her till one of my parents came pick me up, took me home. So when I would go to Meemaw's house, Sports Center and the Weather Channel are the only 2 things I watched. And it's not that she didn't have the channels. She had cable. She had East Alabama cable, but I just watched those 2 things. So in kindergarten, Miss Valentini is my witness, my kindergarten teacher. I knew all my state capitals in kindergarten. Everyone, even like Pierre, South Dakota, Montpelier, Vermont, even the hard ones like Charleston, West Virginia. Who in the world knows where Frankfort, Kentucky is? I did. So they go get the principal, Mr. Taft, of the elementary school, because he called BS on me, a kindergartner, knowing all my state capitals, and I rattled them off for him. I think someone won money on that. It was not me. I think someone won money on that. But I just was glued to the Weather Channel. I was always fascinated by just concept of atmospheric science. I also, in the part of the world where I grew up, like I told you before, not many people travel. Like my neighbors weren't constantly going on vacation. It was just you were boom in Harris County, Georgia, and everyone plants roots. So like Olympia, Washington, or Syracuse, New York, those places were the other side of the moon to me. But I would see video. Oh, there are people who live there. Oh, they've got way different climatological setups than we do. So I was always fascinated by that. Then Twister comes out, and I realize it doesn't just happen. Weather doesn't just happen. Tornadoes don't just happen. There are these entire groups of people who actually put themselves out in it voluntarily. They call themselves storm chasers, and this is an acceptable way of life. It's not frowned upon. We can do this. So then I was all in. And then, like I was telling you a little while ago, then it just becomes, how can you make that happen for yourself? Realistically, are you going to be a weatherman? No, I opted against that. So how would you do that? Well, the only way I could see to do it would be to structure your professional and personal life in such a way where you have max flexibility in the spring. And so that everyone else has been dreaming about this and that and this and that. That's been what I dreamed about. How do I get myself in that kind of position professionally where it's acceptable for me to just disappear for 4.5 days at a time and not really have to take vacation for it?
And you can do your podcast from anywhere, as we've seen. I mean, you're going all over the country. You did a podcast with Matt Campbell at Iowa State. You completely stiff-armed Iowa City. You just refused to go over there. I talked to Pate during college football season. You come on the show HQ a couple different times a week, maybe more, and you're always willing to dive in on Iowa State. And we've already talked about Iowa State. Anytime I ask you a question about Iowa, a legitimate question, you give me a facetious answer. What are your true feelings about the Iowa football program?
All right, so let's answer this in order. Firstly, I did not stiff arm them. They didn't invite me. Iowa State invited me. So let me put that out there. I'd be happy to go to Iowa City.
I would guess that 99% of college coaches know who you are. I'm not sure Kirk Ferentz does. He's 70-some years old. He's not listening to podcasts. What I need to talk to this Josh Pate State for? We're good.
But he sat down with me last summer, and we had a great conversation at Media Days.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, well, if that's the case, then he does remember you. And now that, full disclosure, as you mentioned, we're both CBS 24/7 Sports, run by CBS and Paramount. So you're going to be covering Iowa a lot more because of the Big Ten tie-ins. And I'm sure that relationship is going to be worked up a lot more. Iowa State, when I posted that you were going to be on the show, I got a couple different texts from people in the Iowa State program that were like, yes, Pate, he just came through here. He's great. We love him. So what are you just dodged it again. What are your true feelings?
I was wondering if you noticed that.
About the Iowa football program.
So you know how when we were talking about Iowa State, I told you the things that pop in my mind. Well, with Iowa, the things that pop in my mind are I actually think Kirk Ferentz, because he's been there long enough where there are portions of his early career that overlap with my childhood at Iowa. So I think him. I think complete continuity in branding, unlike what we were talking about with Iowa State. It just never changed,
Tiger
which I love because, like you asked me, my favorite uniforms, I say Bama, Penn State, USC, the stuff that never changes. I love that about college football. So I think complete hard-nosed as a program, not just defense, but as a program. I think adherence to tradition, values, and culture, because it really never changes there. And those things are good. The one thing I think in the modern day is leaning on really good at the expense of exploring whether you could be great. And you're talking really offense there. So I get really caught up or really conflicted when I'm talking about that, because we've seen so many programs burn themselves to the ground, not willing to be content being really good. And then they chase something that's probably a little beyond their reach, and then they fall flat on their face. Tennessee is a good example of that. And they're in the wilderness for like 10 or 15 years. So I understand if a fan comes back at me, and many Iowa fans have, and they've said that. But then also there's the other side of me that thinks as an outsider, I think, okay, well, if they're happy, then how stupid am I to question it? But it's not 100% consensus across the board.
Oh, no.
Because there, as you well know, there are other Iowa fans who would say, no, what are we even doing this for if we're not going to strive for greatness? We're not some poverty program, by the way. We shouldn't be pumping our fist when we make a bowl game. I mean, we should at least explore whether it's possible for us to grab that brass ring at least once. And so what I've been doing, and I'll do it now because this is a very healthy exercise for me. I don't know how healthy it'll be for you. Explain to me so that I can disseminate it to the rest of the world how people feel about the offensive staff changes there as of late.
Well, I think that most fans are happy that Brian Ferentz is gone. I think most fans know that this would not have happened if Beth Getz, the new athletic director, wouldn't have forced Kirk Ferentz to make this change.
Which is amazing.
Yes. There's a lot of amazing things when it comes to the Iowa football program, and not all of them are good. And there's also, I think, there's a a thought that, yes, this could be better. Yeah, we're hearing all these good things in practice, but what's the common thread here? Over the years, it's Kirk Ferentz. I'm not going to get fooled into thinking there's going to be this great, huge change that's going to all of a sudden catapult Iowa to the top of the Big Ten where you can compete with ranked teams, unlike they did last season, not scoring a single point against them. I think most of us are in wait-and-see mode when it comes to this, but in the end, it's a good thing. Change needed to be made. I wanted to see, look, Brian, you're staying on staff. You're going to go be the offensive line coach again and bring in somebody else to be the offensive coordinator that can do their own thing, that doesn't have a Ferentz looking over their shoulder. I think that's my thought, and I think that's the thought of most Iowa football fans at this point. Some of them get defensive about it, but I think that's a small percentage of Iowa fans that get defensive and say, yeah, well, we still win 9 or 10 games every year. I think that's a smaller percentage than the fans that feel the way you do and that I do, that we do so many things great. Defense, special teams, continuity on the coaching staff, loyalty in the program. If we just had I always say, if we just had the 99th best offense in the country, you could be a college football playoff team.
Yeah. So here's the follow-up question. I don't just have it for you. I have it for myself. So you know how with the expanded playoff, everyone is looking at Penn State saying, wow, Penn State's really well positioned to not have to change a thing and thrive in this new environment. And I agree with that. Well, they're saying that about Penn State. You know, that could apply to Iowa as well. Mm-hmm. Like Iowa could not change a thing or just incrementally, fractionally change offensively and improve to the 99th best unit in the country, as you just said. And they could absolutely be sitting there. You know what else will help them is the erosion of divisions there. Because for better or for worse, right now, you've had in your head as a committee member or any kind of person who's responsible for ranking these things, yeah, they're a 9-win team, but that's a Big Ten West 9 wins. Well, now it's just going to be a Big Ten 9 or 10 wins. And so if you feel like I do, that the committee is really going to lean hard on strength of record and strength of schedule, you give massive legs up to the SEC and the Big Ten. And like, I'm a believer, this is going to be a great case study this year, but I'm a big believer you're going to have like 3 lost teams in the Big Ten or the SEC jump over 1-loss teams, especially from the G5 ranks or perhaps from the lower level P4 ranks, like a Big 12 team. Wow. There's a world where they go 11-1, which is kind of weird because they probably go to the conference title game. But anyway, 11-1, think about that regular season. Think about a 9-3 regular season, but 3 of your losses have come against playoff teams or have come against even top 5 teams, because that's possible in this new world. Iowa may actually be a team right behind Penn State as being the best in line to not change a thing and basically just watch the sport come to them instead of them evolving. Now, that doesn't change the fact that they stand very little chance once they get in the playoff.
And that's the problem right there. That's the problem. Like, yeah, we're winning 9-10 games a year as an Iowa fan. But in these games recently, in the last 3-4 years, when you go up against, and not just a behemoth, I'm not talking like playing Alabama or Ohio State or like just a ranked team, you get your ass kicked and you don't stand a chance. That's the gap that they have to somehow close with this new offensive coordinator. But the problem is you've got Cade McNamara, who has been injury prone throughout his career. We've tried to set an over-under start total somewhere around 7.5 games, I think, on this show for Cade McNamara. Now, they do have a competent backup in Brendan Sullivan, who they got from Northwestern in the transfer portal. What do you think is going to change, if anything, with this Iowa offense this upcoming season?
I don't think if you took a person and you cryogenically froze them at the end of last year and then you thawed them in August, so they miss all the off-field stuff. They miss the headlines. They're unaware of what happened. I don't think they'd be able to watch Iowa and tell anything's different. So I doubt that there's going to be a massive pendulum swing, because you're right. I mean, the one thing we know about how old is Kirk Ferentz, by the way?
I mean, he's got to be 70 or so.
All right, let's say 70 for argument's sake. The one thing we know about 70-year-old people who have been pretty successful in this game is one of the last things they do, 68 years old, one of the last things they do is wake up one random morning and say, yep, it's time to overhaul everything. It's time to change everything. So you're running the Iowa offense. You're running Kirk Ferentz's offense. Yeah. I don't think much will change. And that's why I went back to the whole reshuffling of the aesthetic of college football, because there is a world where nothing really changes, or maybe you have marginal degrees of change, but nothing that's overtly noticeable. But just because the landscape of the game changed, you end up being the 11th best team in the country, and you end up making a playoff, and then you end up exiting in the first round after losing, 23 to 14 or something like that.
They're not scoring 14.
True. Yeah, actually, sorry about that. So you end up exiting 16-6. But my question would be, is there a portion of the fan base that all of a sudden finds themselves a little more appeased, even though nothing changed? It's just the aesthetic changed. Just the deck chairs got rearranged. Yeah. It's the same ship.
That's a good point. And when you look at the schedule this year, because Iowa has 3 protected rivals and their Big Ten West teams, their schedule doesn't change as much as everyone else's. So when you look at it, they're going to be favored in likely at least 9, potentially 10 of their 12 games. So you win the games you're supposed to win, and as you just pointed out, you might take a 10-2 Big Ten team over a 11-1 Big 12 team in this new playoff structure, because the conference is better. It's the 2 super conferences, and then it's the Big 12 and the ACC, and then a huge drop to everybody else. It's now the Power 4, but as you pointed out many times, it's the 2 super conferences at the top. Let's swing this over to Iowa State then, because I know Iowa State fans are, they were alarmed probably when you said that a 3-loss Big Ten or SEC team could get in over a 1-loss Big 12 team. How much of a disadvantage now is the Big 12 at in this new landscape?
Well, they're at a disadvantage, not if you win your conference, though. So the one thing that's fascinating to me, I look over at the FanDuel odds market right now, and they have the odds to make or miss the playoff. There is no team in the Big 12 that is minus odds to make the playoff, even though they're guaranteed to have at least one team in the playoff. And that is an odds maker simply saying, we know someone's going to make it. Good luck to you if you think you know which one is going to make it. So there is a group, I think 9 deep, maybe 10 deep in that conference of teams that are like plus 1,200 or better odds to win the conference. So it's going to be a classic Big 12 year in that we get halfway through and you say, I don't know any more now than I would have if you asked me in August. So when I was up there in Ames 2 months ago now, I sat down with Matt for a little while, and we talked about all kinds of different things off the field, but also I sat down with their staffers. I sat down with the people who run the behind-the-scenes mechanisms, collectives, things of that nature. And I'll tell you the one thing that stood out to me that's not going to be a national story, and that is Rocco Becht will be talked about because he's the quarterback at Iowa State, and he had a nice season last year. He'll be expected to do big things this year. But here's the thing about him that I think will be really important to remember if they're there in November, and that is a lot of big-time teams came calling for him. Mm-hmm. And he had big NIL offers, much bigger, candidly, than he'll make this year at Iowa State. And there were some major programs in those big 2 conferences that are a quarterback away, and they know it, and they're willing to pay in accordance. And he said, no, thanks. And he said, I'm choosing Iowa State. And that sounds like a little rah-rah speech, but it's true as well. So I think about the effect that has on a team that I think is top 5, both sides of the ball, returning production. And I think about the national way that people used to talk about Matt Campbell. And the way they talk about him now, you know this, is, oh, he had his window, he had his chance, and it's passed, which was the first thing I wanted to talk to him about when I went there. And he can share whatever he wants to about that in his own time.
The Brock Purdy, Breece Hall teams that he didn't win big with. Yeah. And this is kind of his second coming.
Yeah. And it's not even that he didn't win big. Like in Iowa State context, he did win. Like they have won with them. It's just that there's this reshaping of what should and shouldn't be at Iowa State. And dude, a 7-win season is doing some of the best work that's been done in the history of that program. But once you start getting some expectation about yourself, that's not good enough. I even agree with that. Like they shouldn't be operating based off history. They should be operating based off what you expect for yourself in the here and now. So like 2 years ago, they got their shot and they underachieve. And that was disappointing. It was disappointing to me, and it was disappointing to a lot of folks there. But now, because of that, I think overwhelmingly the national feel on him is he missed his shot. When people say that, they're not talking about his shot to win at Iowa State. They're thinking Iowa State can't possibly be this guy's final job. He's got to be looking to get out of there. And his shot was take that 2021 season, win 9 games, parlay that into an offer from fill in the blank, fill in the blank, fill in the blank. So everyone's forgotten about him, is what I'm trying to say. Everyone talks about Chris Kleiman now. Everyone talks about Leipold now. That's who you talk about in the Big 12. Folks don't talk about Matt Campbell unless you're watching Late Kick. No one's talking about Matt Campbell. And so think about the context of Rocco Beck turning down outside offers, choosing to remain there. Think about the context of the insane amount of returning production they have both sides of the ball. Not production off teams that have done a whole lot, but returning production, both sides. And then you've got a coaching staff that knows they're doubted. And I promise you they do, because I was in the building all day last month. I know that they're keenly aware of it. It's not that it motivates them singularly, but they know about it. And then think about how many close games you're expected to have in a season like this in the Big 12. Every week, man, is 7 points, 3 points, 4 points, this way or the other way. Someone is going to be +4 in one possession games and end up winning that conference because of that. I see no reason why Iowa State couldn't insert themselves into that mix.
Texas and Oklahoma are gone. You've got, the Arizonas, the Colorados coming in.
Utah, the favorite to win the conference.
Utah is the favorite, and then Kansas State right behind them. How do you? It's kind of hard to break it up because of, there isn't just this behemoth. Nobody is even. You said to make the playoff, nobody's minus numbers in Vegas. To win the conference, nobody is even under +300. I mean, Utah is still 3-1 to win this conference. So, what's Iowa State's ceiling this season?
Winning the Big 12 is their ceiling. Winning the Big 12, making the college football playoff is their ceiling. You think that's ambitious? As a ceiling, Christopher, as a ceiling.
I don't. Not as a ceiling, because I think that's possible as well. Matt, you wanted to jump in?
Well, I was just going to add on to that, what Pate was saying about the success of Iowa State being, to me, I credit a lot of it just to the continuity that Campbell has been able to keep with his staff alone. I mean, John Haycock at defensive coordinator has had for so many years. The offensive coordinator has shifted around, but, he moves up guys within the program. He kind of builds within. And I think players appreciate that. I mean, you saw the stat a couple of weeks ago. They're bringing back the most returning production on the field. 89% or something like that, leading the nation. So I think in this transfer portal era, I think that has to mean something too, Pate. Don't you see that when you go across the country and you're talking to coaches and guys are leaving here and there, and to keep that continuity within the program is I credit a lot of the success to that.
Yeah. So I'll give you a little peek in some of the off the record stuff I talked to him about, because I don't think he'd mind this being out there. It's a credit to him. I had done a show the week before I went up to Ames, where it was a mailbag show. And so a viewer asked me, what is something that I would be fascinated with about college football that I would never know? And I said, the way coaching hires are made would thoroughly disappoint you. If you were to see behind the curtain, the way coaching staffs are filled out in this sport, it would completely disillusion you to the facade of how thorough this process is. All it is a guy is with WME or a guy is with CAA, a guy is with a major rep and agency, and then that agency gets him a max deal and gets him a massive buyout. And in return, he says, thank you. And that agency says, you're welcome. Here's one thing you're going to do for us. Here's a list. These assistant coaches are our clients. Choose your assistants accordingly. And that's it. And that's normally the way it happens. And so I said it on the show. And I got some texts from people in the agency world that said, yeah, I wish you wouldn't do that. But I got some texts from people in the coaching world saying, wow, never heard anyone say that. Well, Matt Campbell doesn't do that. He is famously one of the very few head coaches behind the scenes that, and believe me, it takes some audacity to do this, conducts his own searches and vets his own candidates and has his own criteria and his own critical factors because he knows this is not Alabama. I can't just pay multi-million-dollar buyouts and then do it over again next year if it doesn't work out. I've got to nail these hires. So I get up there, and one of the first things he wanted to talk about was that, about how much he said, I appreciate, number one, that someone gets that. But number two, I appreciate it because I feel the same way. I look and it's my job, like it's my legacy or career on the line. I'm the one who's going to be blamed if we lose, credited if we win. Why would I ever outsource that? Why would I put that in the hands of someone unless I'm outsourcing it to someone brighter, above and beyond in football acumen terms what I am? And respectfully, agents are not that. And so he talked about that. And so it's no mystery to me why they've had the continuity there. And it's no mystery to me, in turn, why he feels comfortable at the OC position this year, for example, elevating from within. I sat in that OC's office and talked to him about it. He said, dude, do you know what it means to us when jobs come open and inside this building, we kind of know, ooh, we're going to have a shot because he promotes from within instead of, ooh, I wonder who I'm going to be working under this time next year, someone I've never heard of before. So I think that I don't think that's an accident. In other words, he's not the only person who promotes from within, but there is a very, very purposeful reason why it works there, because he is not throwing darts at a board to fill out his assistant coaching tree. Therefore, when it comes time and someone moves on and gets an opportunity, you got a Taylor Mauser in the house like, yeah, I'll elevate him. He's the best one for the job.
So, Pate, lay it out right now. How does Iowa State make the college football playoff this year?
They win a bunch of one-possession games. They are plus turnover margin. They execute in the red zone better than they did last year. And then they are in it at the end of the year. And Matt, do you have, by the way, Iowa State's schedule that we can pull up for a second? I wanted to point out something at the end of the year. They have their toughest games late in the season. And I think there's a back-to-back stretch where they've got Kansas State and Utah. And so for better or for worse, we're going to know who they are. And then you've got Saturday, November 23rd. They go to Salt Lake City, and then they come home for the end of the year game against Kansas State. I would be surprised if the Big 12 championship game was not decided like in those 2 weeks. How would you – I don't see many ways that those games don't have Big 12 championship game implications on them. And you could either look at a rematch a couple of weeks later, or Iowa State is going a long way in deciding which one of them makes it and which one doesn't. But I think Iowa State's going to be squarely in that mix. And, of course, health is the other thing that no one knows and everyone has to juggle. But I think they could be in that mix at the end of the year.
The top two favorites in the conference in back-to-back weeks to finish the season, at Utah and home against Kansas State for Iowa State. So we've heard ways that both Iowa State and Iowa could make the college football playoff here as we visit with Josh Pate from the Late Kick podcast here on Two Guys, presented by Fareway Meat and Grocery, Channel Seed Studios. Josh, we're going to let you go in just a few minutes, and you got a lot to do today. You pushed your show back for us this week for storm chasing as well. There are just a couple things we want to hit, and then we'll finish things up at the end of the show without Josh to get into the triple B and all that stuff.
Hey, by the way, Christopher, can I ask you one question? So the conversation we just had, where Iowa and Iowa State, we presented paths to the college football playoff for them. Sometimes I'll do a show, and that's the flavor of my kind of show in the spring. I think it's stupid to be negative in the spring because nothing's happened yet. Well, I'll get a text from a buddy of mine or something like that, and they'll say, look at you. According to you, 37 different teams are going to make the playoff. Well, it's not that at all. I don't even make my playoff predictions until August. But I don't know how miserable my life would have to be to spend May in glass half empty mode and trying to pick apart ways that you won't make the playoff. Like, from a philosophy standpoint, should we not be thinking about what's possible? Should spring not correlate with optimism? And then should we not take a turn towards negative town more in August? Like, do you see that the way I do, or should I just sit here and say 6-6 at best right now?
I just thought of an idea for a segment on CBS Sports HQ. We're going to have you on in the next couple of weeks, and we're going to ask you the ways that Georgia, Alabama, etc. miss the playoff.
Glass half empty,
miss the first expanded playoff. You'll be happy to come on for that. I do want to talk about something that's I think glass half empty to a lot of people. The NIL era and the big news that came out last week with the settlements where schools are going to actually start paying players. But what I don't really think it's talked about enough, or it has been explained enough to me anyway, is Title IX is still going to be involved with this. So if you have $20 million to spread out in your athletic department, it's got to be half and half. And you also have to pay, the men's, the lacrosse team. I know Iowa doesn't have one of those. Iowa State doesn't either. But I just feel like there's not going to be enough money to pay the big-time guys on the football team, on the men's basketball team. And we're still going to be asking fans to raise that money and pay those players, because that $20 million, when spread out throughout all sports, is not going to be enough. Do you think in 5-10 years fans are still paying players?
In some shape, form, or fashion, yeah. I think the volume will be turned down on it a little bit. In other words, I don't think that you'll do away with an NIL deal being served to five-star Chris Hassel above and beyond his revenue share cut. I don't think that'll go away. What I do think may get tamped down a lot is the University of Iowa's biggest collective begging fans to contribute $10 or $15 at the time because we've got to go recruit kids like Chris Hassel. I think that may be turned down a little bit. I saw someone say this the other day, and I think it may be true. I don't have a personal legal theory on this yet, but I saw someone say it could be that the whole Title IX thing was a big scare tactic that was used to maintain status quo. But once that wall has crumbled, now magically universities are going to figure out a way to make sure the money falls into the buckets that it's supposed to fall into. I could not defend that legal point. Okay. You get me in a courtroom and I just white flag it. That sounds like something that would end up happening in college athletics. Like we get 5 more years down the road and this has settled in perfectly. And we look back and we say, hey, Chris, you remember once upon a time, everyone said this couldn't happen because of Title IX. And then it happened, and Title IX was like never really that big a hurdle. How did that happen? Well, the way that would happen theoretically is Title IX was used as much more scare tactic than it ever was going to be an actual hurdle.
How about players basically holding their own schools hostage, saying, okay, I want this amount now, or I'm jumping into the portal and X team is going to give me X amount and I'm going to go. Do you think we'll see less of that?
Far less of it. Firstly, because I think the bigger the conference you're in, the more money that you'll be guaranteed to make. And the natural cycle of transferring is such that guys want to jump where they have a better earnings potential opportunity. Well, you've got to have open spots on the roster to be able to do that. And if no one's vacating those spots, then there are far less spots to fill, even if you are good enough at this level and you want to jump up. But the second thing, forget that point. The second thing is, I think some way, somehow, the incentive structure will be such in your earnings potential that you won't want to leave. The way that you have to structure this stuff is incentivize staying on the same roster.
That's what we're missing right now.
Yeah. Like if I'm a freshman at the University of Mississippi, if I'm at Ole Miss, I should know that I'm going to make X amount. But here's what else I should know. If I end up being a sophomore and I'm at this same school, I'm doubling that. And then if I'm a junior at the same school, I'm quadrupling that. And if I graduate from Ole Miss or I get drafted out of Ole Miss, the same school that I committed to, I have got a payday waiting for me that would greatly supersede anything that I would have gotten if I transferred elsewhere. And if I transfer elsewhere, I don't need to be legally forbidden from doing it. That's illegal. But what I need to know is I start my earnings over from scratch there. I get to take the money I made with me, but I go back to the bottom rung of the incentivization ladder if I transfer. So the way that you prevent a lot of that is you don't make it illegal for guys to transfer. You just remove their motivation through an incentive structure. Now, that sounds simple. How legal is it? Are you allowed to shape that revenue sharing tree the way that you want to? I don't, like, I'm not in the weeds enough on that legally to know if we can do that or not.
Josh, thank you so much for coming on with us today. Really appreciate you. This is a first on this show. We were gonna just, it was just gonna be me and Van Winks, but I wanted to throw a big bomb out there and just see if it would land. And you said, hey, I've got some storm chasing stuff to do, but you know what? I'd be glad to join you on Memorial Day. So thank you so much, Josh.
A pleasure, sir. Thank you.
Hey, on
Josh
behalf
Pate.
of Cyclone Nation, by the way, thank you for carrying the flag.
Stop it.
Yeah, hey,
going,
Chris, if you know anyone at Iowa who is aware I exist, tell them thank you as well.
Sound the sirens, baby. Let's go.
We'll get Josh Pate to Iowa City sooner or later. Josh, thank you so much. Josh Pate from the Late Kick Podcast. You could see it Tuesday, 8 o'clock Eastern time this week. And it was a great conversation with him, and he's kind of showcasing exactly what you'll hear on the Late Kick Podcast, which is a peek behind the curtain. He'll say things that some other people won't say. He gets information that some other people do not get. Maddie Van Winks and Chris Hassel with you on Two Guys, presented by Fareway, Channel Seed Studios. Chris Williams is not here because he is in the Ozarks.
Yeah, what's he doing down there?
I think he's down there with his family, his dad, Mr.
Yeah, they got the
Williams.
lake house. That's right. They got the lake house down there. Probably out
Last
on the boat,
year he did a show from there. This year he's like, nope, not doing it. The basement flooded. I need a break.
Dude, he's had a hell of a week. Oh, my gosh. It never ends.
I do feel bad for him, but nevertheless, it gave us this opportunity to bring in Josh Pate, and I hope that you guys enjoyed the conversation as much as we did. Have some things to get to here. Because Williams has left, this gives me the opportunity to do something I never get to do, which is talk about our sponsors.
That's right.
Right? So, Game Day Men's Health.
I got a story about Game Day Men's Health.
Do you really?
I drove by it yesterday. I was over in Prairie Trail in Ankeny.
Did you stop in for a little blood draw?
Well, they weren't open on
Sunday. Low T?
They weren't open on Sunday, but I know exactly where it is now. So next time I'm back around there, I got to stop in and say hi to our friends at Game Day Men's Health. They got locations where in Ankeny, they got one next to you, and Grimes too. So cool.
I'm just guessing because they're everywhere.
No, I don't think they're
in Ankeny, Delray Beach, Florida. I think pretty much wherever you're at, you're going to be within 20 minutes of a Game Day Men's Health. And it's not just, it's not just low T. They do all kinds of stuff where you go in there and they'll help you out.
Ankeny and West Des Moines, by the way.
West Des Moines. Okay. Well,
and I believe one in the Iowa City area, if I remember right. So GameDayMen'sHealth.com.
Did Williams send in a triple B? I don't think he did.
I don't
feels
think
like
he did.
He's not on the show, so he doesn't need one. But we still have to do the bigger, bolder, better.
Bigger, better, bolder. Powered by Kelderman Manufacturing.
Yeah, and I'm still screwing that up.
Bigger, bolder
better. Because Williams, when he first started talking about this segment, he would always say bigger, bolder, better, and then it was better, bolder,
oh, yeah,
bigger,
that's right.
And a better butter burger makes a butter burger better. It's presented by Kelderman Manufacturing. I can't wait until Kelderman douches up Williams' truck a little bit more because it just needs a little bit more on it.
I saw a souped-up truck driving around yesterday, and it kind of looked like it had a Kelderman grill on it, so...
Oh yeah,
it's that time of year, man. People are getting out the fancy cars, get those lift kits on.
Wait, well, I was just thinking of a song there.
Oh yeah,
doo Chevy with a lift kit.
Something
would look
about
a
a lift
whole
kit.
lot better with you up in it.
That's Florida Georgia line.
Ah, okay. You want me to go first?
Sure.
Okay. My triple B this week is a golfer you might not have heard of until this weekend. How about Mr. Riley? Davis Riley.
So do you remember his first name?
Yes, I do. Davis Riley entered the final round of the Charles Schwab at Colonial with a 4-stroke lead. Yet he wasn't even favored to win the tournament. Why? Because Scotty Scheffler was 4 strokes behind him. Scotty Scheffler was going to chase him down. Scotty Scheffler has a history with Davis Riley. Many a year ago, they're the same age. Scheffler was playing at Texas. Riley played at Alabama. They were rivals. They met in the 2013 U.S. Junior Amateur Championship in California. And Scheffler won that match 3-2. It was really weird. Riley called a 1-stroke penalty on himself. And that penalty ended the match. And so this guy's got that juju playing with him from 11 years ago. He's got Scheffler right on his tail, playing with him in the final round. And the betting markets say this is a dead heat. Both players were like plus 120 to win this tournament. And Scheffler doesn't get close. Scheffler is the one who comes back. Riley is steady the whole way, and Scheffler never even gets close to him on that back nine, and he gets to put on that sweet plaid jacket with the is that the biggest trophy in sports? That trophy that's like a NASCAR trophy. That thing, that's like the when you win at the Iowa Speedway and you get that whole gas tank for winning the Colonial. So congratulations to Davis Riley. Not many people believed in him going into that final round. He got it done.
I was just reading too on the PGA that his sister is battling a brain tumor, or a tumor at least, and that he's another thing on his mind too. And obviously the whole golf world mourning the loss of Grayson Murray too.
Horrific.
Just a horrible story.
And I thought about giving the Triple B to his parents as well, the Murray family, because I thought they handled it as well as you could in that circumstance. The tour went to them and said, "We will stop play. We can stop play today and resume tomorrow. We'll just cancel this whole thing because of Murray's passing on Friday night." And they said, no, he would want you to keep going. And then the very next day, they released a long statement saying that he took his own life and that he had struggled with alcoholism and depression. And I just thought that in that circumstance, they handled it first class. And it was a really sad day in golf. Murray, I mean, you thought all these players saying we thought he had turned the corner. He just won a tournament earlier this year, and he's only 30 years old, and you never
newly
know.
Engaged, and sad story. And we're definitely thoughts with the golf community. But hey, I got to see a concert at Jack Trice Stadium on Saturday.
Oh, is this your Triple B?
That's my Triple B. Why not?
The pictures looked amazing,
dude. It was cool. I mean, so what happened was I bought very late tickets to this. I work right over by Jack Trice Stadium. I was at work coming in on Thursday, and I just wanted to kind of peek in and see what the spectacle would look like. And I saw the stage up there, and I'm like, I can't miss this. The first concert at Jack Trice Stadium in 25 years. It's crazy that it was the same, George Strait playing 25 years ago as well. But look how full. It was completely full. I mean, they had the last couple sections roped off just because where the stage was placed kind of on the north side. But
and I thought, Van Winks, that looking at these photos, this is exactly Jack Trice Stadium. The way it is right now is set up perfectly for an event like this, because
like
that is how they do concerts in these big stadiums. They have the stage on one side, and nobody sits in that bowl behind the stage because you can't see anything. And in Iowa State's case, that's where the huge jumbotron is, and the Jacobson building and all that, and the hills, and you don't need to sit anybody back there. And it's kind of that horseshoe configuration, and it's like perfect And it sounded like the night was perfect as well. Great weather.
70 degrees. It was
Everything
beautiful.
was perfect except
the beer lines.
Oh, my God. I got so many people in my mentions on X talking about how horrible it was to try to go get a can of beer, a glass of wine at Jack Trice Stadium.
Nobody was drinking wine, I promise. It was
somebody
all
sent me
beer.
Somebody
Maybe
sent me
from
a
the
pic.
End Zone
It was
Club.
a mixed drink, and it looked like it was 4 ounces.
Maybe they were serving those in the club suites, but I'll
It
tell
might
you
have been
what,
the North End Zone, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to cut him a little slack. And I know Williams has shared a little bit about this on Twitter as well. But, this was the first big event they've had in the stadium outside of football where they're serving alcohol. Jack Trice Stadium is not set up to serve that large amount of quantity of alcohol to this many people. Now, we were talking a little bit before we recorded that, if they were going to do this during football, probably half the people at the football game would probably be drinking. You're getting a lot more kids at football games than you are at a George Strait concert. They could have done a few things better, in my opinion. Now the normal concession lines were all selling beer normally, like you would at in a stadium where they would sell like nachos and popcorn. You can get a beer there as well. They had that. They were just serving, I think it was just hot dogs and popcorn, and they had a few little food trucks and stuff that were mixed in among the sea of people. They made you get a wristband in a separate line and then get to your beer, so that added another frustration from people. And then just getting through the concourse, you couldn't walk through anywhere because everything had a backed up line.
And you know what Jamie Pollard's going to say? He's going to be like, "See, we sell alcohol in the stadium, and all you guys do is bitch and whine about it. So this is why we're not going to do it for football."
Well, I'll tell you what, they missed out on a large opportunity to sell more beer. I could see full pallets still at the end of the concert that hadn't been sold.
Well, you said you didn't even have access to an Ames lager.
I couldn't find the Ames lager. I got up to a concession line and they were only serving kind of the domestics, and I got a Miller Lite. I was going to get a Coors Light, and they had all sold out of all those at my line, at least.
Did they have any IPAs or anything like that?
No,
if I'm waiting in a line like that, I'm getting the alcohol that has the most alcohol in it. The most give me a 10% Belgian. Because I'm probably not going to go back and get the Miller Lite's just going to flow right through you.
Oh, it was a two beer limit, I think, and it was the tall boys. Obviously, they had Miller Lite, Busch Light, Mick Ultra, and Coors, and obviously Ames Lager at some of the stands. But I couldn't get my hands on one. I wanted to.
I saw Bloomy Pants had an Ames Lager in his tiny hand.
Yeah, he probably snuck it in his pant leg.
No,
but it was a really great. It was a cool show. It was just
awesome.
the
I think they got to do more of this.
Have to do at least one a year, in my opinion. And the problem is you have such a tight window. Like the only months you could do it is like maybe mid to late April and May. I guess you could do June, but you could see the field. They put kind of like it's not a tarp, but I think it's almost like a plastic.
Protect that turf at all costs.
Surface, yeah. I saw the sports. The Iowa State turf management team was like, I think they weren't too worried, but I'm sure deep down they were a little bit concerned. But no, they got that thing covered up. I think they waited to the last possible minute to put that on because, and they did get a little. We did get a little rain after the concert, but
okay.
But no, it was really cool. George Strait's a hell of a performer, man. He's 72 years old. You know that?
Jeez.
72 years old.
Hey, he sounded good. I heard some of the videos that people took. I'm not a George Strait guy. It's a little too old and twangy for me, but I probably would. Little Big Town would have been my favorite.
They were fun, man. They opened the show, and then Chris Stapleton came out and played, a little over an hour, and he's got an incredible voice, and all these people brought great bands with them. George Strait's got they call it the Ace in the Hole band. Just like it's like an 11-piece band behind him, and really cool. Good stuff. Again, hope they do more of that in the future.
It's two guys. Williams is gone today. We had Josh Pate on as our first ever special guest. Matty Van Wink's with us as well. It is Memorial Day. Hoping you guys are spending it with family. A lot of flowers out there. A lot of flowers for Memorial Day. A lot of take out to the gravestones of the ones that you've lost along the way. We used to do that with my grandpa. Used to go out every Memorial Day and put flowers on the grave of his parents. Conoyer Garden Center, I'm sure, had a lot of traffic this weekend.
Oh, yeah.
in Ankeny and Grimes. Yes,
I got another story. So yeah. I was out to eat at an establishment in West Des Moines this weekend, and the storms that came through kind of knocked over a lot of people's flowers and stuff. And this place had a huge standing flower bed type thing that had gotten knocked over from the storm. And I saw the people at Conoyer were out there replacing it, getting it back into order for these people, getting new flowers in. So that was cool. They had their purple shirts on, so I knew exactly who they were. So shout out to Conoyer there in Grimes and Ankeny.
You have a story for everything. So you're going to Fareway after the show, right?
I am going to Fareway. I'm going to pick up some
you are
chicken
a company
kebabs.
Guy. We love it.
You know what? I got to support our sponsors, our supporters, and should we just throw one more out there? Iowa Event Center. They've got some great shows. AEW, Parker McCollum coming up in June. HyVeeTix.com if you want to check out those shows.
AEW. That's what Williams says. It's basically porn in the ring.
All Elite Wrestling. Dynamite. Did you see the big news out of wrestling, too?
What?
SummerSlam is coming to Minneapolis. I don't know if you saw the big news.
I don't.
Do you know when it's happening?
Sometime in the summer.
2026.
Oh my God! It's like the Olympics.
Well, the thing is, they teased WrestleMania was maybe going to come to the Twin Cities, and they gave him SummerSlam in 2 years. So some people are upset about it, but
Andy
that's
Fales
cool.
is going to hate this show. He hates it whenever we talk NASCAR, wrestling, and country music. We hit almost all of them in this show. I don't think we did any NASCAR, did we? No show on Thursday this week. What we're going to do is, because Williams was going to miss Thursday's show as well, I think he's coming back from the Ozarks then. So we're going to do a Friday show. I think it's going to be, don't hold us to this, but I think it's going to be the same time that we normally do our Thursday show, but it'll be on Friday. And we should go live Friday morning, 8:30 a.m. Central Time. But we'll let you know if we end up doing that, if something changes, but it should be a Friday show later on this week. This was fun. What was the most interesting thing you heard from Pate today, Van Winks?
Ooh, that he thinks Iowa State has a legitimate shot at reaching the college football playoff.
Oh,
honestly,
they're
the fourth best odds right now, as we saw on FanDuel. I think he's right. They do have that. Could be their ceiling. The Big 12's doesn't really have a clear number.
Thing.
I mean,
it's not.
We don't know a whole lot about Utah.
That Iowa State is a
right
playoff level team, or Iowa for that matter. But the paths are there. We talked about it with Iowa. They're going to be favored in 9 or 10 games. That their schedule is still favorable. They're in a super conference as well. Right. That's going to help them. Iowa State is not in a super conference. They're in a conference that appears to be completely up for grabs. So if Iowa State plays as well as we think they can, they should have an opportunity to be in the conversation those last 2 weeks of the year to win the conference. And if you win the conference, it's an automatic berth to the college football playoff. Matt, thank you so much for all the help today.
Great to hear from Pate. I love that guy, and appreciate him coming on with us.
I always enjoy bringing him on CBS Sports HQ. And again, his Late Kick podcast, Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on YouTube. And I know a lot of people already listen to that show on a tri-weekly basis. Is that what you would say?
Yeah.
Tri-weekly? Is that
Sure.
Or is that 3 times a week, or is that every 3 weeks? I don't know. It sounds like something Williams would say, and I would correct him on, but I got to get it.
He's everywhere.
I don't have the mental capability to do that right now. Two guys, appreciate everybody watching and listening today without C. Willie.